You ever wake up one morning, step outside with your coffee, feeling good about your own place, and then realize somebody somewhere decided they own you? Yeah, that was me, standing on my porch, sun barely up, coffee still hot, staring at my house thinking, damn, this looks good, real good, fresh paint, clean lines. Modern vibe finally felt like my home, not some cookie cutter box. And I remember smiling, thinking, yeah, this was worth it. Every late night, every dollar, every sore muscle, and I swear on everything that smile didn't even last 5 minutes. That's when I saw it, that white paper flapping in the breeze, taped right to my front door like a slap in the face. Bold letters, violation notice, and my stomach dropped instantly. Because if you ever dealt with an HOA, you already know that paper ain't just paper. It's a threat wrapped in legal language and fake politeness, and I stood there staring at it thinking, no way, no damn way this is happening already, because all I did was upgrade my exterior, nothing wild, nothing illegal, just better paint, better trim, better lighting, something that didn't scream copy-paste, suburbia. And somehow, that made me public enemy. Number one, I peeled that paper off, slow feeling my pulse in my ears, reading line by line, and the more I read, the more I realized this wasn't about rules, this was about control, because the words were vague, real vague, architectural non-compliance, aesthetic disruption, neighborhood harmony. And I laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because it was ridiculous harmony. My house wasn't blasting music or leaning sideways, it was just different. And that's when
We need to talk about the situation with property.
Power, especially people who sit on HOA boards with nothing else going on. Now rewind a little because this didn't come out of nowhere. A few months earlier, I had decided I was done living in a beige prison. Every house, same color, same trim, same boring energy, like the whole street was stuck in the early 2000s, and I told myself, this is my property. I pay the mortgage, I pay the taxes, I pay the HOA fees too, so I'm gonna make it look like something I'm proud of, and I did what you're supposed to do. I checked the bylaws, every line, every footnote, even the fine print that nobody reads. Guess what it said? Submit request. HOA has 30 days to respond. No response equals approval. And I submitted that request, detailed photos, color samples, materials, everything, and then nothing. No email, no letter, no call. 30 days came and went. Silence. So I moved forward legally, cleanly, by the book, contractors, the upgrades, started, neighbors watched, some nodded, some whispered. And yeah, I noticed her, the HOA president, always watching, arms crossed, staring like she smelled something bad. But she never said a word. Not one, not until it was finished and looked damn good. Then suddenly, boom, violation notice like clockwork. And standing there on my porch that morning, I realized something important. They waited on purpose because intimidation works better. After the fact, they figured I'd panic fold, repaint, pay fines, apologize like most people do because most people don't want trouble. But here's the thing about me, I don't scare easy, and I don't bow.
Thank you for joining this important discussion. Let's move forward with the agenda items.
Set that notice on the table, poured another cup of coffee.
We need to consider all perspectives before making a decision.
Emails, timestamps, because if they wanted to play games, I was going to play
We need to
smarter.
address this issue
Sure enough,
seriously.
it was clear
It's
as day.
affecting all of us.
30-day response rule, plain
We
English,
need to
no
come
response
together
rule
now,
granted.
more than ever,
And I
to
leaned
face
back
this
in my chair
challenge as a
thinking,
community.
So they know this. They absolutely know this. Which means this violation wasn't about enforcement. It was about testing me, seeing if I knew my rights, seeing if I'd flinch, and that right there lit a fire in me. A couple hours later, my phone buzzed, unknown number, and I already knew who it was before I even answered, because HOAs love calling like that. And I picked up, and sure enough, it was her voice, tight, controlled, dripping fake professionalism. She said, "This is the HOA president calling regarding your non-compliant exterior," and I let her talk.
We need to
She
discuss
went
the
on about
implications
standards
of the
and
recent
values and
findings.
community image.
The
I finally got
implications
cut in
of
calm,
this
steady, and said,
are
"I followed the rules.
far-reaching.
You didn't respond within 30 days. Approval was automatic, and there was a pause. A real pause, the kind where someone wasn't expecting resistance. And she snapped back, "That's not how it works." And I said, "Actually, that's exactly how it works, according to Section 8, subsection C." And I could practically hear her grinding her teeth through the phone. She told me there would be consequences, fines, construction forced restoration. And I told her politely, send everything in writing, and she hung up on me right then, which told me everything I needed to know because people who know their right
I can't
don't
do this
hang out the
anymore.
next
We need
few
to
days
figure
with
this
quiet,
out.
quiet. And that's
Now.
when the emails
We'll
started
find a
rolling
way.
in,
Just stay with
escalating
me.
fast. First
Are you
R.
okay?
And the thing about that silence
just
in
a
the
lot to
room
process.
was it wasn't confusion, it was calculation. You could see it on their faces. They weren't thinking, am I wrong? They were thinking, how do we flip this? And the HOA president cleared her throat, leaned forward and said, we will need to review this matter further, which is HOA speak for. We didn't expect you to know your stuff. And the lawyer on the screen nodded, real slow, like he just stepped on a landmine.
As you can see from the report, we've made significant progress,
They
but there are
ended
still
that
key
meeting
areas
fast.
that
No
require
vote,
our attention.
no fines issued, just a promise of follow-up. And as people started standing up whispering, I caught pieces of conversation, neighbors saying, I didn't know that clause existed. They can do that to people. And a couple even said, good for you. And that right there was when I realized this wasn't just my fight anymore. This was bigger because if they were doing this to me, they'd done it before and would do it again. Walking out into the parking lot that night, I felt that mix of adrenaline and calm you get when you stand your ground, but I also knew deep down this wasn't over. HOAs don't like losing control, and they sure don't like losing it
This is not the
publicly.
time for
And
this.
sure
We need
enough,
to
the
talk about this now.
retaliation started almost immediately. First, it was a noise complaint on a night I wasn't even home. Then it was a landscaping violation because a bush was supposedly then it was some trash cans being
This is
visible for more
important.
than
We
12
need to
hours.
talk about it
Even
now.
though half the street left theirs out all weekend, and every notice came with a timestamp, a photo, and a threat of fines stacking up. And that's when it crossed from enforcement into harassment. So I doubled down, documented everything even harder, installed cameras, saved footage, logged times. Because when someone starts nitpicking like that, they usually slip up, and they did one afternoon while reviewing footage. I noticed something interesting. The HOA president walking past other houses with similar upgrades, not stopping, not photographing, not issuing notices, just walking by. And that was the smoking gun selective enforcement, plain as day. And selective enforcement is where HOAs lose all credibility in court. About a week later, there was a knock on my door late evening, and when I opened it, there was a neighbor standing there nervous, glancing over her shoulder, and she told me quietly, the board is panicking. They didn't think you'd fight back. She said the president has a history of targeting people who stand out, and that was all I needed to hear the next morning. I called a real estate attorney, and within 10 minutes of explaining the situation, he laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was textbook. He said they messed up bad. And when I sent him my documentation, he said, this is clean, this is strong, this is exactly what judges hate to see from HOAS. He drafted a response that same day. Firm, sharp, no fluff, accusing the association of harassment, selective enforcement, and bad faith enforcement of bylaws, and demanded immediate withdrawal of all violations, a written apology and confirmation that my exterior was compliant, and it ended with a notice of potential legal action. If harassment continued, we sent it certified email and regular mail, and then we waited, and the silence that followed was deafening. No notices, no emails, no drive-by inspections, nothing for 2 full weeks, and I almost started to relax until another emergency meeting notice showed up, this time delivered by hand. The second meeting felt different from the moment I walked in. The room was packed, standing room, only neighbors who'd never shown up before. Board members looked tired, lawyer was there in person, and the HOA president avoided eye contact. The lawyer spoke first, acknowledging procedural errors and inconsistent enforcement. And then he said the words that made it all worth it. The association will withdraw all violations related to the exterior upgrade. And a murmur ran through the room, and before the president could object, the lawyer shut her down and explained the legal exposure they were facing. Then something wild happened. A motion for a vote of no confidence was introduced by another board member, and right there in that room, the president lost her position. Just like that, walking out that night, neighbors stopped me, thanked me, shared stories, and for the first time, that neighborhood felt like a community, not a controlled zone. And standing back on my porch, later looking at my house glowing under the lights, I realized the upgrade wasn't just paint and wood. It was standing up for yourself and showing people they don't have to be scared. And what happened next would change the entire HOA forever. You'd think once an HOA gets exposed, they'd crawl back under whatever rock they came from. But nah. That's not how power works. Power doesn't like being embarrassed. Power likes revenge, and that's exactly what they tried next. Because after that, president got voted out, things didn't calm down. They shifted. And when things shift, that's when the real mess starts. See, a lot of folks thought the problem was gone new. Board new tone, smiles at meetings, talk about transparency. But behind closed doors, there was resentment. Real quiet, real dangerous resentment. Because I had done something worse than break a rule. I made them look weak, and HO, as hate that more than lawsuits. About a month after everything supposedly settled, I got a letter, not a violation notice, not a warning, but a legal assessment notice claiming costs incurred by the association during investigation of my property. They wanted money, thousands of dollars, and when I read it, I laughed because it was the oldest trick in the book. When you can't punish directly, you invent fees. But this time I wasn't surprised, I was ready, because I knew they were watching, waiting, hoping I'd mess up, hoping I'd miss a deadline. So I responded immediately through my lawyer, and we demanded itemized invoices, proof of expenses, legal justification and authority under bylaws, and guess what? They sent back nothing because there was nothing. That's when things got petty, like real petty board members walking past my house, slow staring cameras pointed my way, anonymous complaints filed with the city over things that were already inspected, approved, and cleared. And it became clear this wasn't about enforcement. This was about intimidation by exhaustion. And here's the thing, most people break, not because they're wrong, but because they're tired. Because fighting takes energy, time, money, patience, and HOAS bank on that. They expect you to fold eventually, but what they didn't know was I was documenting everything again and again because patterns tell stories and their story was getting uglier. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from the city inspector, and he sounded confused. Said he'd been receiving repeated complaints about my property. And when he came out, everything checked out. He said, off the record, whoever keeps calling is wasting everyone's time. And that right there was another line crossed because false reporting can backfire hard. A week later, another neighbor came by. This time angry told me the board had discussed placing additional rules targeting exterior modifications specifically because of my house. They were trying to rewrite the rules after the fact. And that's when my lawyer stepped in hard, because retroactive rule changes don't fly. We sent another letter, this one stronger, laying out harassment, retaliation, abuse of authority, and potential civil liability, not just for the HOA, but for individual board members. And that's when the tone finally changed. Because nothing scares volunteers more than personal liability. Emails started coming, apologetic, careful, cautious phrases like misunderstanding and miscommunication and moving forward. And I could see the fear creeping in, because now the tables had turned. Then something unexpected happened. Neighbors started organizing. Not against me, but against the HOA. People who had stayed quiet before started speaking up about fines, threats, selective enforcement, and suddenly meetings were packed again, but this time the board wasn't in control. They proposed reforms, clear approval timelines, written responses, appeal processes, transparency rules, and limits on enforcement authority. And all of it traced back to one thing: my house being different, standing there listening to people speak. I realized this fight had gone way beyond my exterior upgrade. It cracked. Something open showed people that power only works when nobody questions it. And that's when the final twist came, because just when I thought it was winding down, the HOA lawyer pulled me aside and said quietly, "Off the record, if you wanted to pursue damages, you probably could." And that's when it hit me how close they came to a lawsuit that could have bankrupted the association. I didn't sue, I didn't need to. The win was already there. My house stayed. My rights stayed. And the neighborhood changed. But the real lesson came later, when new homeowners moved in and asked me what happened, and I told them everything, and I saw that same look in their eyes, relief mixed with confidence. Because once you see behind the curtain, you can't unsee it. And that's why I tell this story, because it's never just about paint or doors or siding. It's about knowing your rights, reading the rules, and not letting someone bully you just because they sit behind a folding table with a title. And even after all that, even after the reforms, even after the apologies, you could still feel it, that low-level tension, like a storm that already passed but left the air heavy. Because some people don't forget losing power, they just wait for another angle. And I knew that, because every once in a while I'd catch a look from a board member that said, "We're not done yet." And that's why I stayed sharp, because when you deal with HOAs, you don't ever assume it's finished, you assume it's paused, and sure enough, a few months later, another letter showed up, this time, dressed real polite, friendly tone, lots of smiles on paper, talking about community updates and upcoming assessments, and buried halfway down there, it was a proposed special assessment tied to common area improvements that somehow magically benefited properties closest to mine, which meant me paying more than anyone else. Now I ain't stupid, assessments aren't illegal, but targeting is. And I ran the numbers, checked the map, and it was obvious they were trying to recoup their losses through the back door. So I looped my lawyer back in, and this time, he didn't even sigh. He just said they're really determined to learn this lesson the hard way. We requested meeting minutes, financial records, voting tallies, and justification for the assessment. And once again, the silence came back, because transparency is the one thing. HO. As preach and hate equally, and when the records finally arrived, they told the whole story. Votes taken without quorum, discussions held outside meetings, costs inflated and assigned unevenly. And that was it. That was the final nail. My lawyer sent one last letter, laying it all out: violations of fiduciary duty, misuse of funds, discriminatory assessments, and potential reporting to the state. And that shook them, because state oversight is the boogeyman for HO. As nobody wants that smoke within days, the assessment was withdrawn quietly. No announcement, no explanation, just gone. And neighbors noticed, because people always notice when their bills change, and suddenly doors were knocking again, people asking what happened, how did you do it, how did you stand up to them? And I kept telling the same thing: read the rules, document everything, don't get loud, get smart. Time passed, real calm this time, like actual calm, not fake calm. And the board changed faces again. Newer people, quieter people, more cautious, and the whole vibe of the neighborhood shifted. People started personalizing their homes, a little more different colors, new doors, unique landscaping, nothing crazy, just freedom creeping back in. One evening, I sat out on my porch, watching the sun drop, lights kick on one by one, and I thought about how wild it was that one exterior upgrade set off all this chaos, all this exposure, all this change. And I realized something important: Bullies don't stop because they feel bad. They stop because they get checked. And if I had folded at that first violation notice, none of this would have happened. The harassment would have continued. Someone else would have been next, and the cycle would roll on quiet and unchecked. Now neighbors stop by, compliment the house kids ride bikes again. People wave, more meetings are shorter, less hostile, and that same HOA clubhouse that once felt like a courtroom now feels like just a room. And that's how it should be, because an HOA is supposed to manage shared spaces, not run lives, not crush individuality, not scare homeowners into silence, and anytime they forget that someone has to remind them. So yeah, this exterior upgrade almost turned into a nightmare, but it also turned into a lesson, one that spread further than I ever expected. And if you're dealing with an HOA breathing down your neck right now, remember this. They only have the power you give them, and once you take it back, they don't